Welcome to today's virtual panel discussion. I'm Dr. Alexandra Katehakis, and I'm here with the beautiful, talented, amazing Maddie Corman, who's an actor, writer, and storyteller, and whose journey of resilience is captured in her powerful, now HBO Max film, Accidentally Brave. So during this webinar, we will talk about the complexities and difficulties of navigating a life after betrayal, the emotional impact of this kind of incredibly unexpected trauma, and the path towards recovery and self-discovery. Right, so we will jump off at this point then, let you know that we're going to talk for about 40 minutes and that we're going to leave time for questions at the end. So please stick around to the end so you can get your questions answered. And so I want to say again, hello to you, Maddie, and thank you for doing this.
Oh.
And my first question for you is, I know this is a big question, but here you are 10 years later. And I know a lot of partners really struggle with, should I stay? Should I go? Do I have any hope? And so I thought maybe that would be a good place to start.
I love that place to start. And thank you, Alex. It's always great to see you. And just, it's not in the movie, but I did the 5-day intensive partner workshop at your center. And so for me to see you is very moving because I was not so okay then. And I have days that I'm not so okay now, but more good, more okay-ish than not.
Yes.
So it's exciting to remember where I come from. And that's why I actually really love your first question, like, wow, 10 years. And for me, I have fits and starts because I had the incident, I had the discovery, I had the, oh my God, my life is over, my marriage is over, my family is over, my happiness is over moment. That turned out not to be the case. But then I also wrote about it and performed it, and then had public both affirmation and some not so affirming feedback there. So I've had different elements of my own recovery. I can say that in those early days, I didn't think what happened to me had happened to anyone else, which turns out is not true. And then once I knew it had happened to a couple of people, the women, the partners that I met, and a couple of wonderful men on my side, on our side, I didn't know or see any sex or porn addicts in long-term recovery. So if to start out and to say, I'm doing really well. I make a pledge not to tell my children's story. So right off the bat, I'm breaking that.
Right.
But I want to say, especially to the women out there who are going, oh no, the kids, my kids are great. They're not just okay, they're great. And with elements of things that go through everybody's day. But they are, my kids were 11, I have twins, and 16 on D-Day. And they are young men and women now in their 20s. And they are smart and funny and sensitive and traumatized and thriving most days. So I just wanted to say that because that was my biggest fear, I think, one of many thousands. I also want to say that I still am a partner that is in recovery for betrayal trauma. I am still married, as far as I know, and I believe my partner, my husband, has coming up on 10 years sober. One of the big questions I get is, well, how do you know? I just see changes in behavior. I see, and not, I never knew there was any sort of acting out behavior. So it's not that. I see someone who's committed to his recovery. I see someone who is not rageful, who gets irritated like people do, but then has tools to deal with it. Not to get too detailed, but we have intimacy in a way that feels different. And I don't just mean sexually to get right into it. I
Yeah, right.
mean just I see my person back. I
Yeah,
mean, he's different and he's also more of the person that I fell in love with, and I think I am too, I hope.
sure.
Um so yeah, long-term recovery, I am not doing all the things I did in those first couple of years. Bad news for
Mhm.
me. I would say I was in early recovery. Well, my beloved therapist would say the first 5 years, but I don't want to scare
Mhm.
anybody. It scared me. But
Right.
the first 18 months before I felt like I could even catch my breath. Um, and and yet within that time, there were some beautiful things that happened. Um, so yeah, there's a lot has changed, and I still get activated. I still feel scared. I still feel the public shame part of my story is not what everyone has experienced, and I think that is something that's extra challenging um, for me. Actually, not extra. It's all very hard. So I'm. I think that when I first was dealing with, I didn't even know what I was dealing with. I was dealing with my husband got arrested, and who is this person, and who am I, and what is it going to look like? And my goal was way below serenity. Like I was just really hoping to be able to live long enough to get my kids up and running. Like I didn't even know how to, that the word happy felt like it didn't apply to me.
Mhm.
So speaking at places like this, watching people watch the film, having couples watch it together is a good reminder that even on the days that I have that are hard, I can't believe how far I've come. And I've
Mm.
also learned a lot about myself in these years. And I've had to be strong, but in some ways I feel like I'm more vulnerable and more the person that I was when I was very young in a
Mm.
strange
Yeah,
way.
I think that's why the title of your film is so extraordinary. And I think I see this in many, many partners who are just shattered and devastated in the early months and years, and they accidentally have to become brave.
Yeah.
They have to turn and face this, massive accident in their life.
Oh,
And, it's that Nietzsche saying, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
yeah. And and things that I didn't know I needed to work on, and I don't wish this on anyone.
Right.
But talk about, I'm a
Mm.
person who cares very much what other people think about me. I didn't realize how much, but that's, talk about being brought to your knees. Like,
Mhm.
well, that ship sailed. And even today, I was thinking about it again. I was thinking about how I could say the right thing to make everybody okay today. And I just know that I can't. And
Right.
there's some power in that. Um, and a power in going, I don't know. I can just share what happened to me and hope that that's helpful, because that's what was so helpful to me. Even doing, people say, well, what was the most helpful? And for me, it was a soup. I mean, it was a cocktail of different things that led to the medicine that made me able to move forward. But being around other people who had experienced this felt really, really nourishing for me. And I love, thank God for people like you, Alex,
Mm.
and the CSATs that are helping people like me. And now I'm kind of one, I got my training as a coach.
Mm.
And I love people who help other people. And for me, just to meet other people going through the same thing who are willing to share their stories. And another, I have met the bravest people, the coolest people, the
Mhm.
funniest people. Like this, I don't know why certain people get picked for certain experiences,
Right.
but it hasn't been what I would have made up in my head this population would be. And that's
Yes.
been very affirming, if you will, that it's not a bunch of martyrs or people who are, afraid and have no voice or have marriages that weren't good to begin with. It's not that. And the same with meeting the addicts, which I had when I went to Family Week, and I've had when I've spoken or gone to certain meetings. It was easier for me to have compassion for my partner when I saw other people that weren't him.
Yes.
I think in some ways, I hope that what my film can do is provide a place where someone can go, oh, that's what it feels like. I
Mhm.
think it's very hard for the person to look at the person who they hurt and go, sorry, versus going, oh, I see that person who's so hurt, and oh, my partner probably feels that too. So,
Yeah, I think that's the power of groups like Recovering Couples Anonymous.
a hundred
It's
percent.
hard to have compassion for the person who's hurt you so badly. It's easier to see it in a stranger.
Yep. And it's also
And
comforting to see that we're not the only ones who are having
right.
this trouble, this fight, this communication issue. In my situation, and I call it accidentally brave partly because my story was public. It wasn't
Mhm.
my choice. And yes, I've made it extra, as my kids might say. You didn't have to go and then do a show about it, but
Right.
it wasn't an option for me to keep this a secret.
Mhm.
It was an option for me to talk more about it and get into my story, but the main story was already in the New York Post. And I see examples of bravery every day when I hear from women who are being asked, sorry, I'm genderizing it, but it's
That's
mostly
okay.
women,
Yeah.
who are being asked or asking themselves to keep something a secret. So that's
Right.
another level of bravery. And some of us are way better actors than we're given credit for, because walking through the world knowing what we know and showing up for graduations and birthday parties and weddings is another kind of brave.
Yeah,
So,
especially when you're carrying the addict shame. It's not even your shame.
yeah,
It's like you're covering up for somebody else. And I think back to what you said, I think we all care about what people think of us, even though we say we don't.
yeah,
Human beings are encoded for shame. It is a pro-social function, so we don't go around stealing things and beating people
right.
up and um, behaving like pandemonium. So we don't realize how much we care about it, and there are degrees of it, obviously, until something really shameful befalls us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think with sex addiction, porn addiction, the shame is so prevalent that it keeps us from getting help. At least I didn't
Yeah.
know, when I say I didn't know anybody, I have later found out, of course, I knew people. It's just that people keep it secret. And I'm not
Mhm.
asking for the world to go and everybody tell their stories, but I sure think it would help if more people were telling this kind of story. If
Mhm.
the story is not always, well, there's this bad person who did a bad thing and then we got rid of them and
Mhm.
now we lived happily ever after, or porn is funny until it's not, or sex addiction is a joke. I just feel like that adds to the shame of, I am staying with someone who's sick and needs help. I felt just as much shame, especially early on, about staying as I would have about leaving. In fact, maybe more so. And added shame was not what I needed. And I was still trying to navigate what was going on versus thinking about what other people were and probably still are thinking.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of partners don't get help because they have so much shame. And they also feel like, I mean, many of the women I work with are so capable, so smart, and they're just used to doing everything themselves.
Yeah.
And
Eh,
this seems like one thing that you just cannot do alone.
no, and there also is a very reasonable reaction of why should I have to do any work? I didn't do anything wrong. So that I
Right,
experience with partners. And I think that's true. And it's a family disease and people get affected by it.
right.
So the work, I was very interested early on, and I think the world was interested in, are you staying or are you going? And the
Hmm.
people who helped me the most were like, that's really not the question right now. It's
Correct.
you've been traumatized,
Hmm.
and let's take care of that first. And that may seem like what the world wants to know because it's hard to understand. It's easier to understand you're staying, you're leaving. And even one of the reasons I wanted to write about this and perform about it is I think then, okay, she's staying. So that means it was easy all along. Or
Right.
you're leaving, so you're not in pain anymore.
Uh-huh.
And neither of
Right.
those is true.
That's true.
There's so many factors that go into
Yes.
this.
And I think that is a black and white occurrence all the time. Like, what are you doing? Are you staying or going? With the partners I've been working with who are leaving, they are in a lot of pain over the decision to leave.
Yep.
And it's not that easy to leave a marriage of 10, 15, 30, 40 years,
No.
especially when you have children or grandchildren, because
Yep.
our lives get bigger than our relationships over
Yeah.
time. It's not just about you and me. It's about you and me and the ramifications on our kids and our, if they're older grandkids. So women have these really complicated decisions to make, just because I think we tend to do it that way. This is not just about what I want. It's about
Yeah.
what's for the good of the whole and how's my future going to look. So the level of complication is extreme. And that's why there's an adage in the 12-step program that says no major changes for a year,
That's right.
right?
And
Just let the dust settle.
and I think for me, I can say a lot of it was, well, who am I if I'm the person that stays with this person? What does that say about me?
Right.
And I, I really had to put that voice aside for a little while. And I mentioned this in the show, but I think my daughter actually helped me by saying, in sickness and in health, if we're looking at this as a sickness,
Mhm.
you at least give a person a chance. And the thing about addiction, because I love addicts of all shapes and sizes, I do.
Yeah.
I do. And addicts are not bad people. They're some of the most incredible people. And I didn't have a bad marriage. So it's not like, oh, my bad marriage then had this secret thing also happening. And that's the confusing thing. And that's what makes my head spin is like, how could this good person watch this terrible stuff? How could, and many of the women I work with want to stay. I would say of the partners that I've had contact with, both in my own recovery or people that I've spoken to, I would say in the 90s of percentage want to stay. And it's more about if their partner can get well. And
Right.
I didn't know that. So the shame of wanting to stay also was exhausting. And
Yeah.
if there's shame around, and then the only person you're even talking to about this is your partner, and your partner's the one that hurt you, it's
Hmm.
like this, it's so lonely. It was
Yeah.
such a lonely, lonely, lonely time for me. I really felt, even though my story, the big flashy parts of the story were public, I felt very, very scared to talk to people who I loved, who loved me, because they were also hurt
Yeah. I'm
by my
betrayed.
husband. And they
That's
also
right.
felt betrayed.
Sure.
And I wasn't in a strong enough place to handle their anger, their confusion.
Correct.
I still can't be the spokesperson for explaining sex addiction, explaining I've gotten better at it, but
Hmm.
I certainly in the early days was still trying to wrap my own head and heart around things. And my partner was a person in very new recovery who had also had his whole life blown up by his own
Sure.
addiction, but we were just these
Yeah.
two people feeling very lonely, looking to each other and not having much to give each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah. It's
Eh,
like two fish on a dock just flailing around.
yeah. And I wanted him to fix it because he broke
Right.
it.
Right.
And
And
he wanted to fix it.
right. And your
But he,
friends, the people that love you, were saying, just run for your life, get
yeah,
out. Because again, it
yeah,
becomes black and white. And then there's shame about saying, well, you don't understand. Because
yeah,
nobody's all good or all bad for the most part,
no.
right? We're all flawed human beings.
And I have to give, I did have certain, and I want to share this because so many people don't have their stories in public facing. The one of the gifts is that I had a lot of people who said, what can we do? This does sound complicated. It wasn't all people saying, run for the hills. And I want to be
Right.
really clear about that because I thought that's what it would be. And some people, a lot of people said in a very loving way, I can't even imagine. And I've shared before that felt so lonely because
Sure.
I was
Yeah.
like, I know, I wish someone could
Could,
imagine.
right.
And then I finally met people who could, but I also had wonderful family and friends who said, we love your husband and he's our family and what can we do? And they circled the wagons. I think there's also something with sex addiction that it's so personal to the partner as well.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I, I I had other people's anger and betrayal, but mine felt different. And and then there were people who said in a beautiful way, whatever you decide, we're sticking with you.
Nice.
But that also felt, it's nice and it
Hmm.
felt like a lot. It felt like a lot of work. And I will say to my husband's credit, there were people that were like, well, I need to understand this or that. And I said, here's his phone number, here's his email.
Right.
And and even today I want to say certain things that will explain to you the brain chemistry, but I need to speak as a partner. I need to speak
Yeah.
as
Your own
as
experience.
yeah.
Yeah, I think, one of the key things that you said here, because I have a couple of partners in my practice right now whose husbands are not doing the work, or wives, as it were.
Yeah, yeah,
And so they are divorcing because their behaviors have been and remain so egregious and toxic, and there's no way they can stay. And I think, like you said, most people want to stay, they want to work it out, but it requires both people
yeah.
towing the line. And without that, you can't do it.
Yeah, that I was told that early on. I lay in my wonderful therapist's couch. She doesn't have a couch anymore. But I lay there and I said, I mean, I have to get divorced, right? Like, I mean, I have to. And she was
Yeah.
like, well, I mean, you don't have to do anything. And I said, and by the way, I mentioned my angel. One of the things this woman who did not know me at all reached out and said, you must go to this therapist.
Well, I see.
You must go to someone who understands this. And she just looked at me, our friend Jen, and said,
Mhm.
I have seen it work. And the times I've seen it work is when both members of the couple are willing to do the work, just like you
Right.
just said, Alex. And I have now in my 10 years in this seen each member of the couple want to do the work, and when one doesn't,
Mhm.
it unfortunately doesn't work, and it's not easy. um, but it is nice to be able to say it's possible. um,
Yes.
and I have experienced, the possible.
Right.
And I think that people who do also don't want to talk about it because then they have to look back on something or admit something, and we want to protect our families and ourselves. But I will tell you, because everybody tells me their
Mhm.
secrets, that this is much, much, much more common. And I'm not saying my husband's form of acting out, which went to an illegal place, that, just to be very clear, there are victims. It is not okay. None of it is okay. And there is repair possible,
Right.
in my experience.
There is. I mean, I believe recovery from addiction is a story of redemption. And I see it every day, and it's incredibly heartening
Yeah,
because people want to move towards health and good mental health and being congruent with being good people. But when you take a traumatized individual and you leave them to their own devices to soothe themselves, to make life okay for themselves, human beings get into all sorts of messes and
yeah,
troubles.
yeah,
And so, like you said, you love addicts. My makeup, you love them because they're working to change themselves
yeah,
and therefore change their families and stop the intergenerational transmission of trauma and addiction.
yeah. And yes, to all of that, to all of that. And there is, and I'm trying to do the same. I am
Sure.
not, and I am not without fault. I am not without defects. I am not without a lot of things. And the balance is off in a couple working. It's not, in my experience, traditional couples therapy. And that's another
Right.
thing that I find centers like yours are so helpful with, to go, this is not the same. There's an addiction here. It's
Different.
not,
Yeah.
we got tired of each other. Somebody had one fling one night.
Mhm.
It's not that. But I do know that there is help, and I do know that, for, in my experience, like I said, having partners have a place where they can find community can be incredibly helpful to the whole family.
Right.
I was trying to take care of my kids' feelings and trying to worry, is my husband okay over there, or I'm so mad at him, and just to have people who understand that, where I don't have to watch what I'm saying.
Mhm.
um, so it's something that I feel very passionately about, bringing people together. And I know you know Marnie Breeker, who
Mhm.
has a great podcast. She and I did a retreat for partners, and it wasn't about, oh, let us just get into the nitty gritty. It was just, let's be together and
Mhm.
breathe and do some yoga and do some
Yeah.
art. But it all helps. And I had I I had a lot of privilege, even though I had a lot of trauma and catastrophe. I had the privilege of being able to have my husband go to rehab, which I think was extremely helpful for him. But I also had a lot of resentment that he got to go and, you know, dance around. And it seemed like a great time. I was like, I want to
Right.
go away. I want to go. And I had that in me for a good year, I would say. And then a beautiful friend said, I want to send you to a spa. You're having such a hard time.
Mhm.
And I actually didn't want to go to a spa. I didn't want to be around, um, I didn't want to be around happy people, or people who are like
Right.
mother-daughter trip, or like a bachelorette.
Yeah.
I said, would you, but I would like to do an intensive outpatient for betrayed partners. And that's what I did. And I came out to your center, and it was really helpful to be away from my family and work and just be in it, just dive in. I found that really helpful.
Sure. Well, look, I think what you're saying is that there's no one magic bullet for any of this,
No.
right? That this is an ongoing process, and everything from gathering with other women to breathe and do yoga to doing a workshop that resonates
Yeah.
for you, and finding your own way, because there are even there are the women sort of in the middle. There are women divorcing. There are women that are in their 60s that really don't want to dismantle their lives. And there
Yeah.
are women with very young children who stay for financial reasons, or the children.
Absolutely.
I mean, I have a client who I've been seeing him for probably 15 plus years, and his children were little, like 5 and 8, and his wife stayed because of the kids. And today she will tell you that she's so glad she did
Yeah.
because they've got a really beautiful marriage now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big believer, by the way, in terms of privilege. I'm a big believer in some things that are free, including 12 step and S&On. Um, there's amazing programs. Al-Anon has helped me. Chapter 9, um, couples in recovery, and yes, finances are a real thing, and all of this. people stay for lots of different reasons and people leave for lots of different reasons. And I
Right.
think if we as a society can be a little more gentle with people. And I also know women and men who are betrayed partners who have no children who stay, and
Mhm.
there's no shame in that. You know,
Yeah.
it's an easy answer to say. And I would say in my early days, I probably stayed initially for a variety of reasons. One of which was I was worried my husband might kill himself, and I didn't
Mm.
want that for my kids.
Sure.
And then I was worried about the kids, and then there were legal issues where it would be better for us to be
Mhm.
together, and now I make a very conscious choice.
Of course.
And
Yeah.
so certain people have it's not black and white. I also want to be clear that I'm not uh I have a very, very strong spiritual practice that got really strong during this time, but I am not you made a vow, you stick by it. I'm not that. And
Hmm.
I don't believe I would hope that in my case I watched and I waited and I saw recovery. I don't have an interest in being with an active addict that I know
Right.
is an active addict. And I know
Yeah.
that's a chance we take, but that's I think some people misinterpret if I have any kind of message, and it's not that. It's everybody's in a different situation, and we have to have a little bit of grace and warmth towards people navigating this.
Right. I mean, everybody gets their life and they get to live it the way they want to. And so this is not a black and white situation by any means. There's a lot of nuances to it. So what would have one person staying would have somebody else leaving and vice versa. So
Yeah,
I appreciate that. I think that's really important for people to hear that are listening. But the question is, what do you want for your life? What's right for you? What's right for
yeah,
your family?
yeah.
Not the way other people do it.
Yeah, and I can say that I needed some time to catch my breath to make that decision.
Sure.
There was no way, and I didn't want to be rushed, and I didn't, and anyone who has gone through a divorce will say it's not an easy thing to do, whether there's addiction or no addiction. It's not an obvious choice. So for people pushing other people to get divorced, I find that a little bit
Yeah.
challenging. So, and there's a lot more to life than whether you stay or go. And that was the meat of it, the soul work that I think that I have had to do, that I'm glad I've had to do. I
Mhm.
wouldn't regret that if my marriage didn't end up staying together. That's not why I did what I was doing.
Yes, I think it becomes the whole thing strangely becomes a spiritual path. It's a portal for personal growth and development. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's an extremely painful gauntlet.
yeah,
But if you hang in there long enough, it does, they talk about this in Alcoholics Anonymous, the promises do come true.
yeah,
But you've got to be willing to stay in the process and the way that you talk about. And, I really think it's worth highlighting that you're saying that in the beginning, you were thinking about your husband's well-being, what your children needed. I mean, you were really doing triage,
yeah,
trying to just keep the boat afloat. And
correct.
so that's no time to start making life-changing decisions.
No. And I also didn't, if I had heard everything you just said, I wouldn't believe a word of it.
Right.
I didn't, I couldn't see straight, but there was something in hearing people like you, hearing experts say this thing exists. That was helpful. That was like a little light. And then hearing a couple of women who went before me saying
Mhm.
it gets better, it gets better. I'm telling you, you have no faith, borrow mine. You don't believe in miracles, look at mine.
Oh,
and
wow.
and I want to, if I can give that to anybody, I want to. And it's not a guarantee, but at least to know that it can happen, that people can get well, that broken hearts can be kind of stitched together in a way that makes them more interesting and bigger
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah, and what you're saying just applies again to one's personal path, not to a marriage that you should stay or leave. It's not about
No.
the marriage, it's about your own experience and how you heal from the hurt of the betrayal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a real rebalancing. I got thrown down by this. I really,
Yeah,
really
that's a
did.
great word, rebalancing.
Yeah, it's I'm a work in progress. It's not, someone said to me the other day, maybe I mentioned I was coming to talk to you, and she was like, oh, do you really want to talk about it again? I said, I would love, I- it's not that I love talking about it, but I do think about it, whether I was on here with you, whether I was making a movie about it.
Mhm.
It is a part of who I
Yeah.
am. I lost my mom when I was 16. My mom died. And for so long, I didn't want to be known as the girl whose mom
No.
died.
Yeah.
But then there was this amazing author, Hope Edelman, who wrote Motherless Daughters. And she
All
was
right.
like, that's part of who I am. It's a really big part of who I am.
Hmm.
And it's a lot less shameful to have a dead mother than a sex addict husband, perhaps, but that's part of who I am. It's not all of
Mm.
who I am, but it is a part of who I am. And it is
Right.
a part of my marriage. And it is a part of how I walk through the world. It is. And I don't want to pretend it didn't happen. I wish it didn't happen, but
Sure.
I don't want to pretend, because it took me so long to be in acceptance that this is my reality, that I want to dive into it rather than going, but what if it had been that? What if I had done this? What if I had?
Mm. Yeah, so this idea of inviting all of who we are in, that this is the tapestry of my life, and it's what makes it interesting and rich. And there are dark corners and bright corners, but it's not flat, it's not superficial. It's a part, all of it's a part of who I am. And that is a
Yeah,
beautiful statement of acceptance and also integration. That's what we hope for in psychotherapy, that mental health is about being an integrated person and having a autobiography that is congruent, that we can tell the story about it and we can have a congruent feeling about it, not these kind of disjointed pieces to it.
yeah. I thought I lost a lot. That's a really, to be integrated, because I was like, well, I guess I'm giving up humor. I'm giving up,
You didn't seem to do
yeah,
that.
no, it's back. But you just think when something like this happens,
Mhm.
because it's so, there's so much loss, there's so much grief in betrayal trauma, and grief isn't funny until, whatever it is, tragedy plus time equals comedy.
Right.
But there wasn't anything to laugh about for a long time.
Sure, of
Oh, I want to
course.
make sure, I get to questions.
Yeah, so we have some questions here. One of them is sort of apropos of what we're talking about. Michelle writes, who have you chosen to become and are becoming as a result of your experience?
Oh, what a beautiful question. I mean, depends on the day. There's part of me that's like, again, like accidentally brave, like I didn't choose this. But I do think that having this happen has allowed me to become more of the person I wanted to be.
Mhm.
I had lost part of myself in a marriage that felt off. Something was off, and I was so busy trying to fix what I didn't exactly know. And I think I am a more authentic person now. I didn't feel like I was inauthentic, but there was part of me that was working so hard to make everything okay. And I hope I've become a less judgmental person. I've certainly heard all the stories. Um, I've become more comfortable saying no. I've become more comfortable being alone. Not because I have to be, because I'm scared to go out, but because I go, oh, wait, One of the beauties of public shame and trauma is that nobody expects you to do the holiday card. And I was like, oh, I don't like doing holiday cards. Oh,
That's great.
oh, wait. I Nobody expects me to show up here or there. Again, I'm looking for the gifts, but I
Mhm.
hope I've become a person who asks for help when I need it, but can also offer my own experience, strength, and hope to others. Was that the
I
answer to
think
the
so.
question?
Yeah, I think that's a beautiful answer to a beautiful question.
Yeah.
So someone else writes, what helped you with your shame for staying? And what helped you with your shame about how did I not see what was going on or what was wrong with me that I would choose a partner who could say yes to infidelity and porn addiction for 22 years?
Yes, 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 and yes. And the struggle is real with all of that. And I think it's something we don't talk about a lot, but my anger at myself, my
Yeah.
shame at myself, my why didn't I see? And just to be clear, I did not see.
It's an invisible addiction. When you said that you knew something was off but couldn't tell, I mean, people have told me that for so long. It's not like they're drinking and they're
No.
empty bottles of alcohol.
Well, and I've asked, I've asked my husband. I've said, well, I had all your passwords. I had it, and he just said, look, addicts are really good at
Oh yeah,
lying,
lying, right.
and we're really good at it. And I'm not proud of it, but that's like, and also, why would we be looking for that? Like,
Yeah.
so yes, I've asked myself all those questions, and honestly, I think I just got tired of it after a while. Um, I really do. I think
Yeah.
sometimes I push myself to be in a better place than I am. And I think I had to do all that. I'm mad at you. I'm mad at me. I'm mad at God. I'm mad at the porn industry. I'm mad at the government. I'm just mad. I'm mad at everyone who's male. I'm mad at all the women who are just like, and then one day I just got tired and went, okay, okay. So again, there's a spiritual part of my recovery that I can't exactly explain, except that I had to put the shame and the anger down, and I didn't force it. Surrounding myself with people who are not boring, limp people, but amazing people who are like, of course you didn't know, and your marriage can be amazing. And those, in my experience, were people in recovery and my angel who were like, oh, this is amazing. You're going to discover the best parts of yourself. And of course you didn't know. And so I had to, again, borrow somebody else's. So if I can be of service and go, let me tell you, I'm really smart. I was in a really enmeshed marriage. We talked all the time. We didn't have that big a house. And I knew nothing. I did not know my husband or even think my husband was watching pornography. And then there are other partners who knew a little bit, but not the whole thing. So I think for me, going to meetings and being and hearing other people's stories, and that we all were going through this part of it, which is another thing we don't talk about a lot, about
Mhm.
our own shame and the shame of staying. That was a hard one. It was hard. And a lot of people said, especially because I was public. I mean, I went on a TV show and the host said to me, I would never. And that hurts.
Of
It
course.
still
Yeah.
hurts. It still hurts. But
Yeah.
I have gotten so much stronger. And so ask me or somebody else to hold your hand when you go, "Oh, I'm so sorry you wouldn't do that. What a shame you would miss out on this incredible, incredible relationship that you would let somebody go." And I really feel stronger and stronger in my knowledge that this is an illness, and I'm proud. I'm more and more proud of myself for staying. I think in some ways
Mm.
it would have been easier. I mean, my play would have been a lot more popular if it was like, and we kicked the bastard out and we
Right.
celebrated and I have a new hot boyfriend and he's awesome, or girlfriend.
Yeah.
But that's not my story. So go where it's warm, and don't
Mm.
push yourself too soon to be around the people that maybe are not making you feel strong. But for me, a lot of it was also coming from inside the house. I was saying that to myself. Who are you if you're a person who stays? I thought you were a feminist. I thought you were strong. What are you teaching? And the truth is, I looked at someone who I loved so much, who was hurting and had behaved atrociously. And I was like, I just see it. I just see that this person is sick and wants to be well. And he did a lot of work and continues to do a lot of work. So, and shame is real. And I still struggle with it. If I read the anonymous comments, sometimes I still go down.
Right. So we have another question here. Hi, Maddie and Alex. Thank you. You're welcome. This is from Dale. I'm a therapist and a partner. Most of my quote sisters and clients are highly accomplished women. They're accustomed to getting things done and want to fix the issue and rush to a resolution. How did you handle taking it one step at a time?
Oh God, I wish there was a pill. I wish there was a pill. I really do. And I'm sorry to be the bearer of that news. And look, there are all kinds of people that have different experiences. My experience is slow and steady and not always a straight line. Like, God damn, I feel great today. We had a pink cloud of a day. I love my husband. I'm proud of my husband. And then just something triggers me and I'm back down. Or in our case, there were legal proceedings that were really scary, and I felt so, this is not supposed to be my life. Um, I think that, we talk a lot about in the addiction world about rewiring the addict brain, and that takes some time. In my experience, it takes time to rewire the traumatized, the betrayal trauma brain. It just took time, and it still takes time. And figuring out what feels good and what is helpful. But in the 12-step rooms, some people say, I wish you a slow recovery, because there's beauty along the way. I used to say, oh, I want to get through that door. And, my therapist would say, you're in the hallway. And I was like, I hate the hallway. And she would point out, there's beautiful art in the hallway and God's in the hallway. And sometimes there's music in the hallway. Like, yes, it takes a long time, but it's not like I was miserable, 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 and then great. There really were beautiful moments, including when I signed on to come on here today, I'm really not a tech person, and I have somehow, maybe one of my kids figured out that I have photos that circulate on my homepage. And so I never know what it's going to be. And today it was Expect a Miracle, a photo I took when I got to Family Week. And I did not know what to expect. But, even that week, that was so hard and so painful. It was beautiful. And I met people there that I love. And I learned things about the brain and about my heart. And so I wish I could tell you that it's going to be faster, but there can be some beauty along the way.
That's wonderful advice. Thank you for sharing that. Let's see. Sarah says, when speaking with my husband about it afterwards, besides it really helping to validate the ambiguous nature of the betrayal trauma, he mentioned that you portrayed the mental load very well and gave him more insight into what that means, looks, and feels like. Thank you. So she's really thanking you for Accidentally Brave.
Thank you.
And then there's another question here. How do you deal with the bad days when they surface?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, some days I deal with them by getting under the covers and watching some bad television. Some days I have the wherewithal to reach out to a sister or brother in recovery who's been there and can understand. I find connecting to be very helpful for me, and some days I let it pass through. It's not that I don't have the bad days or the triggers. I mean, it's not my husband's particular acting out, but the film that won, I think it won Best Picture, and it certainly won Best Actress, is about a sex worker, and There are triggers all over the place and they're real. And this is not an easy path. So to think we're not going to have any hard days, or even for me, it wasn't the obvious. That one feels kind of obvious. It was like a song would come on that was maybe our wedding song. And I was like, oh, now that's tainted. And now I'm spiraling. So I have a lot of different ways. The healthy ways are moving my body, making an outreach call, writing. When I wrote Accidentally Brave, it was very important to me to say, I'm doing this for service. I'm doing this for service. And it's true, but I think something I wasn't admitting to myself, because maybe it seems self-serving, is that it was helping me. And so writing about it, sharing about it, has been helpful for me. And I also I work really hard. I mean, I pay a lot of money, I work hard, I go to 12-step meetings. I was in a group for many years for partners of sex addicts. That was private. So I have an army of people. Does that mean I always remember? No, sometimes I'm not in recovery for alcohol, so let me just say sometimes I make a margarita. Not always the healthiest, but on good
It's not
days.
every day, right?
Well, no, I'm kidding. No.
We have a couple of questions here about sex and intimacy, so I'm going to try to merge them.
Okay.
One says, how does sex and intimacy get impacted when trust is important in creating safety? Curious to know how the sexual response and experiencing pleasure. And then the other one says, any suggestions for reclaiming physical intimacy? It's mainly my issue as a betrayed partner, and it feels
Yeah.
impossible, scary to me.
Yeah,
And then,
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that's huge. And I think baby steps, I tend to overshare, so I'll try to watch myself, but I think that there's so many consequences. There's so many things we lose. Addiction is a thief, and sex addiction, it
is a
just
grand
steals.
larceny thief.
Yeah, absolutely. And an arsonist, it just
Yeah,
burns it to the ground. So, in my own experience, yes, it has to be really tender. And I'm like, oh, great. I'm going to be very vanilla for the rest of my life. Um, Alex and other experts write about this. There are exercises to do. I will say this: something about having this happen gave me agency to ask for what I want in a physical way more than I had. Um, I hope my mother-in-law isn't listening. I don't know who's watching right now, but in a good way
yeah.
to go, you shouldn't need to have a catastrophe in your marriage to be able to say, hey, this feels good. But I don't know what it was about me. I wasn't raised in any kind of strict religious background or anything, but I do think societally there's like, well, don't ask for what you want. And I very much got back to learning what feels good to me. Also, sex addiction is an intimacy disorder. I was
Mm.
with someone who I was not intimate with, and I don't mean just sexually. I learned that there was something disconnected. So getting that back slowly but surely and bringing that into the bedroom, has been really good and fun and not easy. And I understand that. And I understand as a partner needing to go, sometimes I have an image in my head and I need to call a timeout. And to me, a good partner to you will say, whatever you need, I'm okay. I'm okay. And that was really important for me, that I have my husband going, I'm all right. This is, tell me, let me take your lead, because I do think there are some people that feel scared. Well, I'm with a sex addict, so I have to perform in a certain way to keep them happy. And that is not true. We didn't cause it. We can't control it. We can't cure it. And for me, in order to feel safe has been the most important thing. And that has taken many years of rebuilding trust, of not seeing any slips, but also just seeing honesty in the rest of our relationship. Um, Getting the feeling that my partner understands. He'll never fully understands, but that it's important to him to understand the level of hurt that I have. That allows me to take that into our intimate relationship. And it's something I'm still working on. I think that there's more to be had. But I will say, having been with someone who wasn't fully present, being with someone who is fully present feels different and great.
Yeah, and that's a really comprehensive answer. So many people think that sex or intimacy is about putting their genitals together, but it's
Yeah,
not. It's all of what you just said. It's about sharing, trust, connection. It's really a heart connection. It's not a genital connection. That
yeah,
comes naturally as a result of the trust and the respect and the vulnerability that's required to make that connection. And without that, you really can't have sex that's meaningful or safe, because you don't feel you feel too vulnerable to even talk about what you want and need.
yeah,
And I do think that women are not socialized to ask for or think about pleasure, and we don't really know our bodies as well. We have to keep learning about them over time.
yeah. And I know we're running low on time, but my husband and I did Fanos, which is a check-in that I know a lot of people do, and it helped. And again, I want to be really clear. I'm talking as a 10-year out person, and I'm
Right.
doing a compilation. And there were times where I was like, I can't even look at you. And there were times where I was like, I need you to hold me immediately. So,
Mhm.
and sometimes that was twice in a day, like the same day.
Right.
So it's complicated, and I love that you even asked that question, because even within this world, I find we don't talk about the sex part of it that much. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the question.
All right, so we are going to have to wrap this up here. I want to remind all of you to please watch Accidentally Brave, that is now streaming on HBO Max. Tell all your friends about it. It's really an extraordinary performance. I love film and television and theater. I would be a junior reviewer if I weren't a psychotherapist. So I'm telling you, this is a spectacular piece of work. And if anybody you know is dealing with betrayal trauma and needs help, feel free to call Center for Healthy Sex anytime. If we can't help you, we will give you resources and point you in the right direction. You can talk about our 5-day intensive. You can go to centerforhealthysex.com. You can also go to maddiecorman.com for her coaching, and also if you want to learn more about what she's been up to. So I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and we hope to see you next time. Please note that the resources are in the chat box, and Bree wrote that on April 10th, you'll be able to find this discussion on our YouTube channel at Center for Healthy Sex, and that way you can share it with other people that you think would find it useful.
Thank you so much, Alex, and thanks
Yeah.
everybody and if you're a partner out there, please know you are not alone. There are so many of us that are
Mm.
out there or in houses all and apartments and dwellings all over the place. And I think we just need to support each other the best we can.
Mm. All right. Thank you, Maddie, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much.